Hey, everybody, Storming on RUMACK. And usually with the Greek, my good friend Billy George at Sakis. He's off taking care of some personal stuff and work stuff as well tonight, but he'll be back. And, of course, we're very pleased to be here on the Fired Up Network with the executive producer, COO, CEO. I don't know what other titles he's got. Used to be Jolt and Joe. Joe Payton.
First of all,
Joe, are you still Jolt and Joe? Or did you retire? Did you retire the Jolt?
I'm Jolted Joe, but that I'm the president of the provinces of Canada, the mayor-elect of North America, soon to run for the mayor of Toronto. Get it right, Norm.
Sorry about
my Joe, because I heard there's 120 candidates for the mayoralty race. Are you on that list?
Do I get your vote, Norm? Do I get your vote?
Well, I didn't know you were on. It's like at the last second. You're telling me you're a candidate. I don't even know what your platform. What's your platform? What are you promising?
Give Greeks a raise, and it's honor to be on RUMACK and the Greek. And like you said, a special shout out to Billy. Hopefully he's back next week, and let's hope to have a good show. And your other guest, you maybe want to introduce him. He's just coming in there, and I just got to say this, Norm. I got to say this. Announce him as part of the Fired Up Network, please. I have signed him to a very lucrative deal, a lot more zeros than you. So announce your guest as now part of the Fired Up Network, available on so many platforms. And he writes on the firedupnetwork.ca and does a show with me and Drew Ebanks of OnPointBasketball.com, Captain Canada.
Yeah, well, of course. Joe, now that you give me a half-hour script, I'll be pleased to introduce Alex Campbell. I call him the encyclopedia because he is an encyclopedia of sports knowledge, and you can see him there from his home in lovely Michigan.
For some reason, I don't know what's going on with my computer. It's just like...
All right. As the producer, Norm, Alex, I know you can't hear. Come in and come out, and let's hope that helps out. So, Norm, sorry about that, but he'll. All right. A little bit of technical difficulties. So.
Okay. Well, we'll get that straight. Good to know. At least he's connected online. All right. So, just a reminder, folks, we're very pleased and honored to be brought to you by COSA, the Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association of Ontario. I've had a long-term relationship. In fact, my buddy here, Joe, remember all those Storm and Norman nights at Woodbine? Yeah. Joe? Of course. That's Standardbred people.
Exactly. And Norm, I remember you going with plates of food, and one time with a guy who, formerly your accountant, H.R. Nargoneff was his name, and he was eating, Harvey. I think his name was Harvey something or other. But those were great nights. Storm and Norman night, great action. And like for going to Woodbine, even going to any horse race in the summertime and having, eating and playing the horses. You played with a few shekels there. Oh, come on. All right. But the food at Woodbine, Norm, you could talk about it. The food at Woodbine, second to none.
Well, the food at Woodbine, they used to make a special lobster for me. Joe, it was the size of one of those pizza boxes. Your good friend of mine, Harvey Corman, he used to pile up at Raptor basketball games in the press section. But this lobster, I've seen the lobster is like, it's almost like a person. The thing was so big. They gave me a fresh like a whole lobster every time. I'm just saying for the folks aren't big deal. I'm just telling you, folks, the dining at Woodbine or Mohawk, wherever you like to go, for Standardbred, or if you're going for Thoroughbred, that's fine. But when they sponsored my show, the food, I'm telling you, not a word of exaggeration, whether you like roast beef or chicken or seafood, salads, and pastries. Joe, you'd go nuts if you saw the pastry section.
What are you telling me?
Never come back.
What?
Well, no, I'm just saying, it's like there's every taste is met. So I'm just saying, because I know these people at the Standardbred Horse Racing Association, especially through Woodbine and Mohawk, great people. So, you enjoy the horses, that's great. But all your friends, your loved ones are going to enjoy fine dining. So I want to really make sure you know that. So check it out. Try it. You haven't been before, try it. I guarantee you'll be raving about the customer service, about the dining, the fun times you have. Check it out. What have you got you got nothing to lose. You got everything to gain. Check it out. I guarantee you'll love it. All right. And of course, Nikki.
Hold on. Today, if you're in Canada, it's Victoria Day. So I want to take this time and wish you, Norm, a happy Victoria Day, and everybody watching and listening to this on the Fired Up Network, happy Victoria Day. And usually I don't ask this question, but Norm, as old as Victoria, so Take me through your memories of Victoria. It's Victoria Day. Go ahead. I could see the fireworks starting out.
Well, Queen Victoria preceded me by quite a few decades, Joe. But maybe if we get time in the show later, we can sing kind of like the revised, British national, because now it's God Save the King, right?
Yeah.
Because it's King Charles. So now it's God Save the King as opposed to God Save the Queen. But anyway, I love, the reference to Queen Victoria and our heritage going back to part of the Commonwealth, still is part of the Commonwealth. But anyway, we're here to talk sports, Joe. I want to, and we have to mention our friend Nicky, the King of Carpets. Big Habs fan. I'm sure he's looking forward to the NHL draft. Big Habs. Who knows? Maybe they'll make a trade for Austin Matthews, Joe. You never know.
Norm, you're going to start this out. And do you want me to break some news here? I usually break it on the Fired Up Network. So
yeah.
I'm on the number 1 programming, RUMACK and the Greek here. Should I break it, Norm?
Well, if you do it quick, we got to get to our buddy Alex.
Yeah, but Alex, he's having technical difficulties.
Oh, okay.
He's walking.
Oh, there he is.
Him right now.
He's walking. I'm here, guys. Sorry about that.
Yeah, he's it. Okay, Joe, give us a quick 30-second breaking story.
All right, breaking story. Rumors. A little birdie has told me that Austin Matthews wants to play for a team in California. That same birdie told me, don't be shocked if we have an Austin Matthews trade on draft night or a couple of days before the draft or after the draft. Till July 1st, they have to sign him and all that. And there could be a sign and trade. Also, I just heard that today from that little birdie. Also, before I forget, and because Alex is the king here of basketball on the Fired Up Network, get it right, Norm. All right, king of basketball here. Now, Steve Nash is in Toronto, and the same birdie told me that Steve Nash is interviewing for the Raptors coaching job tomorrow.
All right, well, good for Steve. I think he'd be a great addition. And the team needs a freshen up. So let's see what happens. They obviously need some freshen up some of their roster as well. But anyway, finally we got Alex. You can hear us okay? Everything cool?
I can hear. I can see. As long as you can hear and see me, I think we're good.
Yeah, okay. Excellent. All right. So, Alex, so much to get to. NBA playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs, Major League Baseball. Let's talk about the NBA. And let's talk about South Florida in particular. I mean, you think about, if someone was making a wager, what's the likelihood that the Florida Panthers, the Miami Heat would be the teams that everybody's talking about? That, I mean, I guess no surprise with Jimmy Butler. That's who he is, right? Mr. Playoff, Mr. Clutch. But in the same year, the Panthers and the Heat needed a play-in game against Chicago to even start things in the postseason, right? So you think of the odds, with Kachuk leading the Panthers and Butler leading the Miami Heat. I mean, do you ever recall like a greater, like long shots like that getting this far in the same year from the same part of the country, the state? It's unbelievable.
From the same city? No, honestly, I can't. I mean, I think we can all remember long shots making it. I mean, I think when we talked about the Panthers before, both of us, I think, referenced, the Giants wildcard teams, the New York Giants wildcard teams ended up making the Super Bowl and beating the Patriots twice, and things like that. I think we can all remember, that wildcard team that got into the playoffs and ended up, being a buzzsaw that just tore through a conference and ended up winning a title. I mean, in every sport that happens. But no, I really can't remember a time when the stars have aligned for a particular city like this. Okay. Now, last time you were on with us, we talked about Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Mm-hmm. So here they are. They're on the verge of, their season ending in the most unglorious, most negative way possible. Yeah, they won their previous round against a tough opponent, but we know what kind of a sports town Boston is. They're a great sports city. But there's very little forgiveness when a team doesn't meet the expectations. And so we talked about this before, if they didn't get out of the previous round, but they did. But now they're in, and especially in Boston, this would be a humiliation. As I mentioned, Miami was a play-in playoff team against Chicago just to get into the dance, right? I think for the Celtics, this would you tell me if I'm wrong. If they lose, they get knocked out, swept, whatever, by Miami.
this is going to be, especially if they get swept, one of the biggest humiliations in Celtic history. Am I right?
Oh, I think it is. I think it's a massive failure. But the thing is that, like, if you really, had your ear to the ground this entire season, especially here in Boston, you could actually see this one coming. I think that yes, the fans were optimistic when the playoffs started, but at the same time, you heard the statistic about how they were a 500 team or under in games closer than 10 points over and over and over again. And then when they faced teams with over 500 records, they struggled in multiple occasions, for some reason, especially at TD Garden and not so much on the road, which makes very little sense. And let's be honest, like, this team is not the defensive team they were under Ime Udoka. That's the other thing too that they're dealing with. They're a better 3-point shooting team, and I think that's a byproduct of just taking more threes. I mean, in some cases, they're essentially, in some games, they turn into the Warriors East, where they just keep settling for 3-point shot after 3-point shot after 3-point shot. And that's really become their mantra under Joe Mazzulla. There's not a lot of paint presence. There's not a lot of driving the lane. Especially, I think that's one of the big flaws, is that they could get after it. I mean, Tatum is a guy, for instance, and so is Jaylen Brown. If they drive the lane 7 or 8 times a game, they're going to pick up the bucket or get fouled 80% of the time. And
Yeah.
you just don't see it happen.
All right. So if we I mean, they really took it on the chin from the panel after the game. In fact, basically all of them, except maybe Shaq, but definitely Charles Barkley, then Kenny Smith. Yeah. Just, what's great about those analysts, they're not kissing up to anybody. They said, never mind, they're poor. He said they just didn't show up.
They just didn't show up. I mean, Tatum goes 6 for 18, Jaylen Brown goes 6 for 17, and they were still the leading scorers on the team. And that's just, you cannot win with those performances. The role players didn't play well. Marcus Smart had a terrible game. Derek White was really one of the only productive and efficient scorers on the team all night. Brogdon had his moments, but was mostly pretty cold. Horford was pretty cold and has been pretty cold for most of these playoffs. And so, that's the thing. And then I think there were also coaching errors. You once you got down 20 points there early in the second half, it was pretty obvious that the lineup they had in when they were trying to play small ball just wasn't really working. They could have gone back to the double bigs, you know what I mean, that they started with, that looked like they were controlling the tempo a little bit for a few moments at least. He just seemed to never go away from the right strategy. And that's been a recurring theme in these playoffs. I think if you really look back, Mazzulla got outcoached at key moments by Doc Rivers. That's a series, by the way, that Philadelphia series should have been a precursor, because look, you have a Celtics team that averaged points for and against in that series per game of 9 points better than the 76ers per game. They were dominating that series and still found ways to get it to 7 games. That to me is coaching. That to me is the little things. There's a really famous interview with John Wooden from a long, long time ago. And the reporter asked him something about I see you spend most of your practice or 60% of your practice on fundamentals. Why is that? It's just the little things. And he goes, every team's out here playing basketball, but if, we're better at the little things, we're better than everybody else. You know what I mean? And that's really, and I think that's where the Celtics, really struggle most, is that, it's in those little details. It's in having a superstar lead the team. It's in knowing your role when you're out there, because that superstar is leading the team, sharing the ball, knowing when to drive the lane. And these guys have been together long enough, they should know how to do this. It's a tough situation. So yeah, it'd be a huge embarrassment.
You think of the longevity now, Coach Spoelstra, former video assistant way back to Pat Riley. So I mean, he really paid his dues. Borrow from Drake, started at the bottom. He did start at the bottom. Now he's a premier coach. This has got. Go ahead.
And I said, well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I said this on the NBA Ballin' Show with Drew Ebanks, the same thing. I think LeBron James is going to be the first player we look at and see an actual coaching tree left behind by. The guys that he recruited to be coaches throughout his career are continually having success in the NBA. It's really quite remarkable. You look at Tyronn Lue and the success that he's had. I mean, undeniable success. You got to the playoffs on a team where your superstar, you didn't know if by 3 o'clock he's going to show up or not. You know what I mean? in LA. And and I think he's got good prospects ahead of him, Tyronn Lue. Yeah, you look at Darvin Ham right now. Look at Spoelstra. It seems like the coaches that LeBron has ushered in, and in a lot of cases pushed veteran coaches out of the way for, have really, really done well. And and I really think that at the end of the day, when he's retired, let's say 3-4 years after LeBron's retirement, we're going to look back, and I think we're going to see. And I'm not trying to give LeBron credit for Spoelstra's success or anything like that, but I'm saying that it just simply stands out as something that's unique to him, and I can't think of any other player. Of course, it takes somebody who has that winning recipe of athleticism and determination and just freak gift of nature when it comes to basketball, like LeBron, plus somebody who moves around from team to team and doesn't stick with one particular coach in order for that to be true. But at the same time, I can't think of any other case where that's true. I just can't.
Okay. I mean, does Spoelstra get all the credit, or who else do we need to credit with Miami? Like, you've got an undrafted player lighting it up from 3-point range. He's like, outside of Butler, he's like Miami's MVP.
Yeah, you've got multiple undrafted players that are lighting it up right now. I mean, Strus has been incredible, but you've got Gabe Vincent's been great. I'm forgetting his name. Caleb Martin has been fantastic.
Yeah.
I mean, they've all been great. They're chipping in 10, 15 points a night, in some cases 20 plus. So they're giving Butler that really, really good supporting cast. And at the end of the day, these are a lot of guys who and even look at Duncan Robinson, very, very similar, where these are guys who had promising high school careers, promising college careers, made it to the NBA, and just were kind of pushed aside. They're either undrafted or late draft picks. They all have a chip on their shoulder. And I think the credit goes to, 3 guys really primarily. And that's Eric Spoelstra, number 1, Jimmy Butler, you can call him number 2, and then I guess 1A, they're not even really 1, 2, 3. 1A, Pat Riley. Pat Riley has built a winning organization, and there's something about I'll tell you something like a little personal about my life, and let's just liken it to this. So my wife's grandmother, we're blessed she's still alive at 92. She's simply one of the greatest women that I've ever known in my life. I mean, she's one of these old school, classy grandmother ladies. My point is that literally in my own life, I've made decisions thinking, what would this woman think? Because that's how much respect I have for her. And I think that's what happens in that Heat locker room. That's what happens when the players are outside that Heat locker room representing that organization. And I think that carries down. I just do. The boat always rocks from the top down.
All right. Speaking of LeBron, should we be surprised, not surprised, the way the Nuggets are on the verge of going to the finals?
I guess surprised a little, because they've been knocking on the door for several years and they haven't made it yet. But at the same time, this is the first time they've all been healthy on all the right places, and they've got the right role players around, and they made some key acquisitions and trades like the KCP trade, that really set this season up the right way. So I think a little bit surprised, but at the same time, I think most of the surprise is because of LeBron's legacy and not because we're being honest with ourselves. LeBron James, he's just not the same player. He's not. I love him, and I'm not saying he's not great. He's one of the 10 best players in the NBA right now. Still, he's one of the 10 best players in the world right now. Still, but he's not even the driving force behind the wins and losses of this organization currently. Okay. You know what I mean? And that's Anthony Davis. How Anthony Davis plays and where he goes, they'll have success. And I think the thing that's been the most disheartening for the Lakers is Anthony Davis went off and had a 30-some point, 20 rebound night already in this series, and they lost. And I think that's a tough pill to swallow, and that really means there's no hope here. I know that I've seen article after article today about how it's not over for the Lakers. I actually think it's more over for the Lakers than it is for the Celtics. Okay,
Alex Campbell, our great guest out of Boston, a Michigan native, and a tremendous source of any and all kinds of sports information. Okay, so I'm a Syracuse guy. I have my bias, so I'll ask you as a total neutral. Carmelo Anthony, a superb, I'll say the last generation, one of the best pure shooters, and you can tell me if I'm wrong or pretty close or whatever. But some of the people who go after him, well, fair enough, everyone's entitled to opinion, say, oh, he was such a selfish player. But you're playing for the Knicks team he was on, the Nuggets team he was on. You're the best shooter on the team. Mm-hmm. Isn't it likely that with his degree of proficiency in shooting from just about anywhere, that you'd want the ball in his hands to shoot when he has an opportunity? Is that selfishness, or is he doing the right thing?
No, absolutely. I think that on the teams he was on and the situations he's in, I don't blame him for the style of play. I mean, other than probably the effort on defense and maybe like,
Okay.
not showing up to camp in shape multiple years. Other than those issues, which again, but here's the thing. Carmelo Anthony is not alone in either of those issues. So I mean, like really, you could say
practice.
Exactly. Some of the greatest players of all time weren't great practice players, weren't super dedicated in practice. And I'm not making that excuse or telling any young player that practice, it's the most important thing you could do, to be honest. Look, at the end of the day, the world doesn't make a bunch of Shaquille O'Neals and Carmelo Anthonys that can just eat cheeseburgers and show up to camp however they want and still dominate the NBA. The world doesn't make too many of those guys. So don't think we can copy that. But at the same time, I always wonder with Carmelo Anthony. My biggest question about Carmelo Anthony is the same thing, and I'm going to sound like a Michigan homer here, but my biggest question about, we can tie Syracuse and Michigan together here, is Darko Milicic. I mean, what if the Pistons drafted Melo instead of Darko? I mean, you're talking about a team that won a title. You're talking about a team with a lot of responsible, journeyman, professional, defense first NBA players that would have raised young Carmelo in a different NBA environment than he was raised in. We're playing for an offensive minded coach that was going to let you go off and then not worry about the defensive end. Those guys, I mean, think about Chauncey Billups and Ben Wallace. They're not going to let him not play defense. That's not a thing on that team. It doesn't happen. You can't. I mean, they will, and they'll literally put Tayshaun Prince over the floor in front of you if you don't show up on the defensive end. So good luck. You know what I mean? See, he'd have to. And so I think that at the end of the day, that to me is my biggest knock on Carmelo Anthony, is what a huge, long, laterally quick athlete that like would have been a great, kind of like LeBron James in a way that, like, there are very few guys that can defend the paint and the perimeter at the same time. He had the size and athleticism to do it. And he would have been an all-time great, if he had. He's an all-time great offensive player anyway. But there's a limitation. But again, not alone on that either. Look, the NBA is a place where if you can score 25 points a night, you got a job.
Well, absolutely, because without the points, you ain't winning too many. One last thing about Melo. Okay, so with those knocks on him, as you said, defense, etc.
Yeah.
So why was he such a good fit, and did he have a different mindset playing on 4 gold medal winning USA Olympic teams? Obviously, I know Boeheim was an assistant, but you don't just play for Coach Krzyzewski unless you're going to bust your tail, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. That's true. Coach K had an interesting quote about Carmelo Anthony. And he said this, and I'm going to butcher it. This is not verbatim. He said that Carmelo Anthony and Kevin Durant, between all the guys I coached in Team USA, those are the only 2 guys that can go down the floor and literally get a good look every single time. There's nobody. He's like, I've never coached anyone else that can do that. You go down on the other end, and it doesn't matter. They get the ball, and they can create their own shot. And it's not even like a selfish bad shot. It's normally a good shot. They can actually get space and get a good shot off every single time. It's true that a lot of those guys can create their own shot. He's like, but 100% of the time, Kevin Durant can get his own shot, and 100% of the time, Carmelo Anthony can get his own shot. And those are the only 2 players he said that about. And you got to think about that, because he coached Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, LeBron James, Tim Duncan. I mean, he coached, basically every superstar over the last 40 years he's coached on Team USA. And that's a pretty high cloud to put Carmelo Anthony on. So if you want to know like his acumen as a scorer in pure basketball, look no further than that Coach K quote. Okay,
last thing on him. Does Melo get into the Basketball Hall of Fame?
I think so. Yes. Because in the Basketball Hall of Fame, we look at an all-encompassing career. And when you look at his point totals, his offensive production, and really that magical run at Syracuse, he's not going to be refused.
Okay. All right. Let's a couple more minutes. Marty Roberts will join us, former pro ball player. But I'll just quick little thing on baseball. The Blue Jays, I know they were trailing Tampa tonight, but we'll set aside that game. But they've been struggling. And for whatever it's worth, in the very tight AL East, they are at the bottom of the AL East. I mean, Baltimore kicked them in the butt. New York Yankees kicked them in the butt. And there's not too much forgiveness at AL East. Is this just a blip on the screen, or is there something, in terms of pitching, hitting a little deeper there?
It's hard to say. I mean, it's real early in the season. You know, we're only in May, but you've got the manager John Schneider already talking about enough is enough, putting his foot down. Like, we can't have this slide anymore. We're talking about players only meetings already. We're talking about potential trades. So it's getting a little ugly. And the Red Sox continue to plot along, and that's a team, you know, that honestly could steal that wild card spot. I'm a big believer that, you know, we're going to have 3 playoff teams come from this division, and it's really at the end of the day, it's a race to the bottom for number 4. Where, like, you know what I mean? Like, whoever's number 4 is the one that gets left out, and you could be above 500 and still get left out. The Jays and the Red Sox are the 2 that I think are most at risk of that.
Okay. All right. So Alex, like I said, we got another guest to work in, but you know, you're like a brother to us. Whenever I need you, you're there. You know your stuff. Cold, freaking incredible. I said freaking, in case anybody was wondering if I said it. I didn't say that. I said freaking. And he's a Michigan guy. Big rival of, well, we're not such a big rival anymore. You guys kill us in football.
No.
And, well, maybe there's still some hope for us in
I still remember, though. I was at I know Marty's coming out. I was at a game and I was there with my mom, who was the reason we had season tickets. Yeah. She's alumni, and Donovan McNabb just came in and just worked us. I just remember that was the worst game I've ever been to. He scored. And
Brady was on that team.
Brady was on that team. Yeah, he was. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe he figured he leveled out when he beat Donovan and McNabb in the Super Bowl a few years ago.
I think he made out fine once he got to the NFL.
Yeah, he did okay. Not a bad career. Hey, Alex Campbell, thanks so much, buddy. We love you.
Yeah.
All right, there's Alex Campbell. He's based out of Boston, native of Michigan, graduate of Michigan University. All right, we're going to take a short break, give a little love to our great sponsor. I mentioned, of course, COSA, Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association, the king of carpets. Nicky does a magnificent job, whether you need carpet repairs, new carpets, whatever. He's the king of carpets, and he's a big Habs fan. Some of you are Habs fans, I guess. So I'm sure he's looking forward to the draft. But we want to give them some love. They sponsor the show. So back with more. Billy the Greek, George Atsakis. You got his name right. He's off tonight, but we look forward to having him back with us next week. And Storm and Norm RUMACK here on the Fired Up Network. Mr. Joe Pasek producing, as always. And back with more, talk some baseball and much more, right here till the top of the clock. So stay right there. We'll be right back with you in a moment.
Now you know the name COSA TV, an industry leader producing unique, high-quality digital content promoting harness racing in Ontario. Features, virtual programming, live events, and more. COSA TV has it covered. Follow our social media channels and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page to view the latest content. And if you're looking to bet your favorite Ontario track, check out hpibet.com. COSA TV, taking Ontario racing global.
All right, we're back. So thanks again to COSA, Ontario Standardbred Horse Racing Association, and the king of carpets, Nicky. And thanks again to Alex Campbell for joining us. If you're hearing some noise in the background here, it's because it's Victoria Day, and of course there's firecrackers and all that stuff going on. I wasn't sure if I was hearing rain or firecrackers or both, but anyway, pretty sure it's firecrackers. So yeah, when I was a kid, I used to do that. You know, you'd stand.
Okay, hold on, Norm. I gotta do a proper introduction because on this show they don't do a proper introduction. I gotta do a proper introduction of the next special guest.
Okay, Joe, I'm going to ask your permission, and Billy watching back home, while you're introducing our esteemed, prestigious, knowledgeable, encyclopedic guest, Marty Rod, the former pro with the Inter-County Toronto Maple Leafs. I'll let him, you can give him his glory. I'm going to take 25 seconds to get my cup of coffee out of the microwave. Can we make a deal on
the microwave? All right. Okay, go ahead. Norm, I think I can carry 25 seconds on this show, all right?
So, sure. Yeah, are you sure?
I'm sure. Go ahead.
Okay, and don't leave me out of the picture when I come back with my Tim Hortons.
I won't leave you out of the picture, even though it will be a better picture. But ladies and gentlemen, here on the Fired Up Network, also on Mometu, on Roku, on Amazon Fire TV, and Apple TV, Android TV, Samsung TV Plus, it's my pleasure to welcome in, formerly the rookie sensation, now the grizzled young veteran, the guy who battles in the corner. I call him now this is a new name, the judge of the Fired Up Network, the one, the only, old lefty 22, Marty Roberts. There you go.
Marty.
I'm still trying to figure out, I didn't think Norm would have a microwave.
Well, it took actually, Marty, I'll be totally honest. You know me. I'm like, George Washington. I could not tell a lie about, instead of the cherry tree, whatever it was he chopped down, is like my microwave. I must admit, I didn't buy it. I inherited it from my mother.
So does it have the dial turn on it instead of push the numbers?
You know what, Marty? It must have been well made, because this thing is my mom and dad had this back in the 80s, and it's still working, Marty. Wow. How's that for technology?
Well, that's impressive right there, Norm.
Now, I worry that maybe, because it's old, maybe it's going to fry me a little bit, but so far I'm still alive and kicking. You never know. All right. Marty, great to have you on.
Okay, hold on. Marty Roberts' favorite team in the National Hockey League is the Pittsburgh Penguins. Norm, I gotta ask him this question, then we'll go.
Go ahead.
The former Maple Leaf general manager, Carl Dubas, apparently is meeting with the Pittsburgh Penguins this week, I hear on Wednesday. Now, the one and only, the grizzled young veteran, Marty Roberts, broke it on Fired Up Network. How many weeks ago? Like 3-4 weeks ago.
Whenever I was in Pittsburgh.
What? Yeah, that was in March. That was March. So basically 2 months ago. Broke it, and tell everybody what you said on the Fired Up Network.
I had heard once I got to Pittsburgh that they were going to offer Mr. Dubas a blank check to become the GM and possibly the president as well of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Well, so Marty, I got to ask you, as a Penguins fan, are you saying yay? It's like, wait a second, what are they doing?
I don't mind it. I really don't, because I thought over the last few years, Dubas has done what he had to do and gave the players he needed for Keith and the Leafs to be successful. Yes, the only thing he sort of didn't get was the goaltending. Yes, we all agree to that. But he did he went out and got some gritty guys. He got some guys that could be second liners, third liners, four liners, guys on defense. So he did his job. Now, yes, he messed up the cap a little bit, but the good thing about going to Pittsburgh, they're almost at the cap anyway, so he can't mess it up too bad. But I wouldn't mind it. He would be better than what Ron Hextall was with Pittsburgh over the last couple seasons.
Okay. All right. So the whispers are becoming, they're not so much whispers anymore, that because Dubas is, let go from Toronto, and you say going to Pittsburgh, that the suggestions are that Austin Matthews, from several media sources, from pretty good ones, that Austin is going to play the field and may not be inclined to return to Toronto. So if that's accurate, and there's a chance or a good chance that he may leave, don't the Leafs have to be very proactive? They can't get burned. They can't wait too long. They've got to, if that's true, they've got to move him when they can get the most in return. And to me, we'll see if you agree or disagree, Marty, getting the best package in return, if this rumor is more than rumor, would be at the upcoming NHL draft. Do you agree or disagree?
Yeah, I agree. Like they definitely have to, Norm. You're right. Like if they know that there's a chance that he's not going to sign, they can't afford what Calgary happened in Calgary. Goodrow leave for free. They'd have to get whatever they could for him. And you know what? That might be, you're right, at the draft. You could his highest leverage or that the Leafs would have would be at draft time. Yeah,
no, I mean they're the Blackhawks aren't going to trade the number one pick. No. I'm saying that's just not going to happen, right? Not like, but there's certainly other teams in a good position, and maybe a combination of players at this draft, players, good ones in the minor league system, and some established pros where the Leafs, obviously they'd have to make up for the scoring, but if they could add depth to that blue line, add depth to their third and fourth line, and maybe even, fix up the goalkeeping, maybe they could do almost the whole thing in one or two deals.
Well, and I was thinking, the perfect team might be the Winnipeg Jets.
Okay, tell us more. Well, the goalkeeping, yeah.
Right, the goalkeeping. They have the goalkeeping, yet they can't make it in the playoffs. So maybe they look for a guy like Matthews that can put the puck in the net, and something can be worked out with Hellebuyck. Because I was reading reports that Hellebuyck doesn't want to sign long-term in Winnipeg because of whatever came out at the end of the year or the way that things were handled. So if that's the case, and you could get a goaltender like Hellebuyck in net for you, that solves a lot of the problems that the Leafs have had over the last few years, has it not?
Yeah, but here's what I wonder, though. I mean, Austin Matthews, he's from Arizona. Okay, I don't know what's in his contract, but at his level and his value, I mean, could he? Because I'm just asking because I don't know. Could he do like what Eric Lindros with Quebec Nordiques way back in the day? Could he say, "Sir, sorry, I'm not going to win, and I'm not disrespecting winning. I'm just getting into his head."
Yep.
From the American South, that's where his parents live, still in Arizona. He'd probably want to go to a warm destination, California, Florida. I don't know, but he's a prominent American. He's one of the best American hockey players, probably for the last 30 years in terms of his talent. Could he say, I'm not doing that?
He could, and I don't know if with this new contract that he had signed, before, if he has a no trade clause in it. I can't remember if he does.
He might have a limited movement,
right? He might. Like I know that Marner has one that kicks in, I think July 1st.
Yeah.
So anything with Marner would have to be done before July 1st, or else it'd be more like I think it's JT Miller in Vancouver
Matthews
that had the same thing.
No, he does.
Matthews has the same thing.
It has to be moved before July 1st. So that's why it's critical that they wanted him to sign before July 1st. So Matthews, Marner, the core four, like they say, have that. But Matthews is up this year because they lose him next year. He could go to unrestricted free agent. The year after, Marner and Nylander, right? So that's why it's critical to get him under, if they want him, to keep it under wraps there for 4 or 5 years. But also, if he's staying on with the Maple Leafs, the little birdie, he wants $15 million. Okay, Norm, I'll start off with you. You saw, even if he stays on with the Maple Leafs, nobody's worth $15 million, but Austin Matthews wants between $14 and $15 million.
Okay, well, if the Leafs project him to get even better, stronger, more dominant, better all-around player, better playoff performer, better two-way player, if they project him that way, that he's going to grow to be, like Steve Yzerman was not, for several years with Detroit, not a great two-way player. Scotty Bowman got into his head. He wasn't going to do it, but he kind of put whispers out there that Stevie Yzerman was going to be traded to Ottawa. Well, that, from what I hear, from my friend Mr. Devellano, that shook up Stevie Y pretty good back then as a young man. And guess what? We all know the rest. Stevie Y became a tremendous two-way player. He was already gifted on offense. So I'm just wondering with Austin, the Leafs have to kind of mull that over. If you give them that money, then for sure, guys, it's simple math. The top four has to get broken up. You got it. You can't. Where are they going to get any money to get anybody on the third, fourth line, on the blue line, and in net? It's impossible.
Here's that what nobody's talking about, and we talked about it a little bit on the Fired Up Network, myself and Marty. Jake Muzzin could be retired. That clears off $6 million. Okay, and because he's long-term injury risk and all that. Then they are, again, from what I heard, Dubas was trying to make a deal with John Tavares where they would eat half his salary. They would pay $6 to $7 million and get somebody to take the rest. So that way they save $6 million there. So you take $6 million from
They probably have to give another team draft picks to get them to eat that part of the contract.
They did that with Patrick Marleau to, I believe it was Carolina. Marty would, I would believe it's with Carolina. So again, there's a lot of work, but again, Brendan Shanahan in his press conference, he very detailed everything, what went down, and he said that the coaching decision and the contracts will be given to the new GM. Well, that new GM better be signed before July 1st. And that new GM, he wants somebody who has been there.
Well, they said they're going with an interim. And is the interim guy the right guy to be making that decision?
Well, here's the thing. Brandon Shanahan was probably making most of these decisions anyways. So with him not having a GM in place, that just allows him now to say, yes, I'm making the decisions till we get someone in here. Because there was reports that Dubas had a trade in place and Shanahan vetoed it at the last second. So Shanahan has power to veto anything. And with him not having a GM in place, I think that just allows Shanahan to say, I'm going to make this move or decide on this if someone doesn't get in place. Like with Pittsburgh, I know that Burke vetoed a couple things with Hextall as well. So the president can always veto it. They still have to go to the guy above them and say, hey, is it okay that we go forward with this?
Yeah, by the way, Marty, if I can interrupt. So you're saying when they Dubas almost had the trade or Shanahan was about to give it the blessing. You talking about for Austin Matthews?
No. I'm not sure. I know Knives was part of it.
What's that?
I know Matthew Knives was part of the deal. Whatever deal was going, it was vetoed because I think he was involved in it. So Shanahan said no to that. I don't know who was coming on the other side, but I know that he was part of that. That would
you spoke to him. You spoke about him a couple minutes ago. It was to Winnipeg. So for the goaltender, for Matthew Knives and a couple other guys, I'd rather not say, but he did, and he also vetoed another trade. 2 or 3 trades from what we heard, 2 or 3 trades there also. So, but the interesting thing is, they got rid of Dubas, but Dubas and Spezza then resigned. Put it that way.
That was a big tell to me. I don't know if it was for you, Norm and Joe, but if Spezza was the guy they thought they were going to put in there, as soon as Dubas was Spezza handed his resignation. Does that speak about something that's happening higher up in the Leafs organization then?
Yes. In fact, Norm, I'm sorry. I'm going to do this. Fans, tune into the Fired Up Network Thursday, the flagship show where I'll reveal everything, what's happening, and very detailed, like Brendan Shanahan did. And Norm, you know this. I got it from a few connections I have. One of them in the Toronto Star. I'm not going to say his name, but very detailed and all this.
He's probably watching. Hi, but I got to whisper it. Can you read lips?
And here's the other thing. The interesting thing, he got rid of Dubas, but Sheldon Keefe is another lame duck coach. He has 1 year left. They fire him with the new GM. Whoever comes in wants to bring his staff in there. And here's another thing. I just got texted about, and seriously, Marty, I just got texted about 10 minutes ago, and Maple Leafs, Brendan Shanahan, is talking to a former Maple Leaf, and you know who he was, a Chicago Blackhawks coach, and a former Florida Panthers coach, Quenneville, but the NHL kiboshed a move because he has not done outside of the National Hockey League his work there, because you know what's going on with that
was that situation in Chicago back around 2010.
Yeah. So it looks like Brendan Shanahan wanted to bring in, for at least for an interview and maybe more, Joel Quenneville, and it was sort of squashed by the National Hockey League. That guy would have been a good coach here, and maybe they gave him the coach GM role because he has seniority in the National Hockey League. What do you think about that?
Well, I was going to ask because Stan Bowman also paid a price for that situation in Chicago a decade ago, and I wasn't. Sometimes I might miss something. Is Stan Bowman back yet? Or have there been whispers about where he may be going?
And I don't think he's going to be back.
Okay.
I think he's the one guy that's for sure is not coming back.
You mean at all or just right now?
At all. I think at all. I think Quenneville is a guy I could see coming back. I really can. Here's a question for you, Norm. Because if the Leafs get a new GM, would you expect him to fire the coach right away, or do you think he would leave him in place to start the season, and if things go bad, he then decides to fire the coach?
Well, most new management people who come into an organization usually, and keep in mind, I mean, the Leafs won a playoff round. They won this year. Just the truth is, you just look at the number. They won 2 more games than they did, in previous years in the playoffs. So, and it was 5 games and they were out. Yeah, they went to overtime, but it's not horseshoes. You don't get points for being close. You either win or you lose. Okay, that's just the cruel facts of professional sports. So, most GMs, now I can't say all. Is it possible that they would leave Sheldon? It's possible, but I'm sure if I'm a new GM, I wouldn't necessarily, if I know I'm going to get hired, I do that homework before my press conference. Make sure if I'm the GM, I'd want to be sounding out the players on that team, privately, and then looking at the tapes of the game. Like, and I'm sure any GM would, is like, especially the playoff games. Okay, am I seeing patterns? Do they look like they're prepared? Do they look like they're following direction? Do they look like they're giving a full effort? And then I'm sure what would concern a GM is the lack of productivity from the core 4. Like, I mean, that's happened before where they've done okay, or sometimes just not very good at all. And if I'm a GM, I want to make sure my head coach is going to do whatever he has to do to get these guys playing like they never played before. That's what Mr. Tkachuk is doing. Well, there's the example. You got to get a guy who can set the league on fire. Other players are scared to even look at him. You need those 4 top Leaf players playing like that, and for the most part, they have not.
And by the way, at the end of the second period, Florida leads 1-0, leading Carolina. Blue Jays, we'll talk about Blue Jays because Marty Roberts is there, losing to Steve Carney's. Yes, Steve Carney's.
My Tampa Bay Rays.
Steve,
Tampa Bay Rays.
Madden hasn't been there for a while, so they're not your team anymore, Norm.
But he's an alumni.
6-4, Tampa Bay beating the Blue Jays 6-4.
Oh, they're catching up a bit.
Florida, second intermission, leading Carolina 1-0, and the Lakers are leading Denver.
Okay.
Lakers have to win.
All right. So let me jump in, Joe. Okay, so let's jump to the Blue Jays. So Marty, this slump. So they get kicked in the rear end pretty good by the Yankees, and then they get swept by Baltimore. So give us the specifics, Marty, of what's going wrong, and is it a Schneider problem? Why is the team underperforming to this degree right now?
It's obvious. Guys in scoring position, they are not getting guys, and they're getting guys on base. Like tonight, they lose 6-4 to Tampa Bay. Bases are loaded. Bo Bichette up. He hits a 4 little dribbler back to the pitcher, game over. So they're not coming up with these clutch hits. That's a big part of it. And to me, also, I've never seen, in all the years I played, yes, I didn't play in the big leagues, but all the years I played, I've never seen a head coach go out and forget that it was the second trip to the mound.
Yeah, like that's probably never happened, has it?
You know what? And it's funny. I thought, who would have done that? And I heard today, I was reading something. Don Mattingly did it when he was with the Dodgers.
Wow. Well, he was a pretty good coach.
Right? And so he's standing beside. So all the guys that the Jays have on the bench that are coaches, there's got to be 10, 11, 12 of them.
Yeah.
No one tells Schneider, hey, are you taking him out or not?
Yeah.
Right? Because if you are, we already went out there one time. So you go out there, you take him out. To me, that's the coach isn't locked in. So if your coach isn't locked in, how can you expect your players to be locked in? So this all, to me, goes back to Schneider and how he's handling things, because he is making he's making bad decisions as well on some things. And that, to me, and then he comes out, yes, he took full responsibility for it. He did. I effed up. That was it. I did that. But it probably was the right time to take him out. Okay, wait a sec here. You were still going back to the dugout. The only reason why you took him out is because the umpire told you had to. So you weren't even making the right decision to take him out. But you admit it, you messed up doing that as well. So this is something that can't keep happening with the Jays. There's base running mistakes that are happening over and over. You know, you got Whit Merrifield yesterday getting picked off first base. No reason for it. Kevin Biggio's made a couple, brain farts on the base. Belt. Things are happening that should not be. Today, Vlad Guerrero drops 2 balls that was in his glove. For 2 errors. That, honestly, that's the game. There's only 3 earned runs. They would have won the game 4-3 if those errors do not happen.
So how can a team with this much talent that, the expectations are sky high, they have been for a few years. I mean, that's just not focusing and concentrate. How does a team with that level of talent not focus and concentrate on simple routines in baseball?
Hey, I know from when years I played in college and at the intercounty and all that stuff. Now it's a different time. I'll grant that. But back when guys weren't locked in to playing and making mistakes over and over and over again, you just sat on the bench. You thought about it by sitting there. Not let's go take your next at bat. Let's go take the next inning out there. You sat down and said, hey, think about what you're doing. Until that time, you're not getting back in the game. And these guys, for one reason or another, like a lot of these guys grew up with Schneider as their coach from A, AA, AAA. They've seen him all the way up. To me, it just goes back to the coach. It really does. I think John Schneider got off to a great start when Charlie got fired last year, but that's because usually after a coach gets canned, teams
there's a rebound effect. Yes. Yeah, and that's true in all sports or most sports anyway.
Right, but he's made some decisions. We saw it last year in the playoffs with taking Gossman out, bringing the bullpen in. That cost him that game. He's done it a couple other times. Yes, he's doing things a little better in some aspects, but in other aspects, he's not getting better at it. Like, I love Varsho. I do. But the guy's struggling. He is really struggling. And he had a home run today. I'll give him that. It was last inning home run. But you knew that Tampa was bringing a left-handed hitter or left-handed pitcher in after the opener. But he still put Varsho in the 5 spot. Mm-hmm. To me, Varsho should have been down maybe in the 7 spot. So you don't see that lefty as much. But he left him up there. He struggled against the lefty. Right? So there's some things that have to be changed here. There are only 2 games that are 500. American League East, you don't play as many games now against them. So now Tampa and the Yankees, after this Tampa series, they don't play those 2 until September now.
Well, yeah, that's
going to be tough to make up some games that way, right? Like to me, I think Nate Pearson has done a good enough job to be out there in high leverage situations. He was out there yes in one, but that's only because default they had no one else to go fill that spot. So he has to start trusting. We got a guy who throws 100 miles an hour in the bullpen. Start using him the way that Baltimore uses their guys that throw with high velo, like Tampa uses their guy. Let them go out there. It's easier to make a mistake throwing 100 miles an hour than it is making a mistake when you're throwing 92, right? It just makes it that much easier.
Norm, 1 second. We have a lot of. I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have a question here. I don't know if you see it, but I'll ask you, and then Marty, you give your thoughts on this. This week, great Cleveland Browns, great Jim Brown passing away. Thoughts on? It says Norm, give your thoughts on Jim Brown's passing.
Well, a remarkable athlete. And at Syracuse University, he was a 2-sport All-American in lacrosse and football. Yeah. And actually, ESPN did a good job highlighting his top games at both the college level and the NFL level. But also, not well known, he played some basketball at Syracuse. And back then it was known. I mean, there was some racism in terms of policies at Syracuse. They're just as bad as some other schools. They took action on that and corrected and apologized to those players who they discriminated against. But Jim Brown was only allowed to play a certain number of basketball games. But Jim Brown, if you see, especially the college level, the NFL level, 5 guys would try and tackle him, and they couldn't. I used to hear guys say that actually you could hurt yourself trying to tackle him. Now you can imagine, a guy like that. And I met him. In the fall of 1980. They were opening the Carrier Dome, so a bunch of their former players came back. And I met him in a bar in downtown Syracuse. Just randomly, he was there. I wanted to meet him. I'm telling you guys, Joe Marty, I never saw a hand that big and that thick or shook one. I'm telling you, not a word of exaggeration. It was the closest thing to a hand being a steam shovel. You're like the bottom of the steam shovel, like, the picking up the dirt thing with the long scoops. I've never, his fingers were as wide as my wrist, for God's sakes. Just like, you can imagine with his power, and Marty, as a former athlete, you could appreciate. I don't know of any other athlete who went out in the peak of his prime, probably could have easily played another 5 or 7 years, but he wanted the movie career. And it's like probably the rest of the NFL on the other teams are probably, thank God. Do you ever remember a guy who, like, other teams were afraid to, because clearly they were afraid to tackle because he was such a punishing, imposing physical specimen?
Marty, that's for you.
Well, I'm not old enough to remember Jim Brown playing. Sorry, Norm.
All right.
I'm not in the Jurassic Park era yet, but could you imagine what would a guy like that today playing in the NFL's worth be to a team?
Oh, well, that would be whatever. I know, whatever the max contract is. I mean, he would have got it. And, he also, to his credit, a lot of people don't know, he worked with the gangs, from what I understand, the Bloods and the Crips in Los Angeles, to try and get them away from that lifestyle and that kind of behavior. He did that. And he spoke out against racism, including at Syracuse University, where in 1970, so that's long after Jim Brown was gone, some of the black football players on Syracuse University's roster went on strike because of their rules, policies, the way they were being treated. Now, to the credit of the school, decades later, about 10 years ago, they erected a statue to honor the players who went on strike because they were right. And it was Jim Brown, by the way, who mentored the late Ernie Davis, God rest his soul. Ernie was the next in line as a Syracuse running back, and he was on that national championship team, the only one they've had in football, in 1959. And Ernie, unfortunately, towards the end of his time at Syracuse, developed leukemia. And back then, this is the late 50s, they had not much in the way of treatment. And to his credit, if I got the story right, he got drafted by Washington, but Washington also had some discriminatory policies. So they traded him to Cleveland. And Art Modell, the owner of the team back then, from what I understand, if I got the story right, he took care of all, because they had no Medicare. He took care of all of Ernie Davis's medical bills. So Jim Brown's number is retired. Ernie Davis is a much beloved figure, and they made a movie about Ernie's career and his life at Syracuse. He's the first African American to win the Heisman Trophy, Ernie Davis, and they made a movie about him. Dennis Quaid stars, and it's called The Express, and pretty powerful movie. But yeah, Jim Brown is a legend in terms of just, I'll bet you if you gave him a pair of skates, he'd scare the living daylights out of guys playing hockey. He was just one of those guys who could pick up any sport and dominate it and dominate opponents easily. Incredible man.
Before we answer the next question, wonder who puts that out. The only guy I remember, and Norm, you could be putting this, was Barry Sanders. And for that matter, Megatron from Detroit Lions. Barry Sanders retired at his height of his career, much like Jim Brown and all that. And Barry Sanders, for his own right, was a superstar also.
Yeah.
And he retired there. And Megatron was the other. He was a wide receiver, not a running back. Barry Sanders, of course, a running back. Megatron was a wide receiver. Both of them, in like 10-year span, be in Detroit there. So maybe we should ask next time we have Alex Campbell on there. We should ask him. But here's the next question. It says, guys, but I'm specifically going to go to Marty because I have a sneaky feeling somebody wrote this, right?
a sneaky feeling? The guy who couldn't be here today? You have that sneaky feeling?
I'm not saying, don't get me more in trouble with this guy, all right? Enough of doing his show, okay?
He told me he's lowering his expectations to only 79 wins now. That's what he's lowered his expectations to, 79 wins.
For those who don't know, by the way, check out the FiredUp Network every day. For those who don't know, Norm, specifically for you right now, Marty Roberts went on here about a couple weeks ago, said the Blue Jays are going to win 95 games.
I said 90.
Yeah, you said 90, and your partner, the Greek, said
one and
84.
only. Yeah.
Said 84. These guys have been going back and forth, and now we have a question. It says, and I don't know if you read that, Norm, but guys, how many games will the Blue Jays win?
I'm going to go down to my original one that I said first off, which was 92 wins. I still think 95 I went up to because I felt bad making Billy walk up the 400 for 92 wins. I thought, let's add another 3 wins to have him walk up the 400. So I think 92. I think, here's what I think is going to happen, Norm and Joe. I think at some point over the next few weeks, a couple things might happen here. It's either if the Jays don't turn this around, Schneider's gone. There's no way that the Toronto Blue Jays spent all this money to finish at the basement of the American League East. Not happening. And the other thing is they're going to go out looking for another bat and someone else in that bullpen. And as long as they're, 4 or 5 games over 500 and then those moves happen, this is still a savable season in my mind because they got the pieces there. For some reason, it just isn't working right now. I don't know why. What do you think, Norm?
Well, here's how I'm going to come back to the point you made earlier. So last year we saw some of, the Blue Jays, that famous play in the outfield. The guys just collided because they weren't focused, right? Yep. And then you mentioned Vlad missed 2 routine plays, as great a ball player, especially great a hitter as he is. So I'll ask you, when 2 seasons in a row you see, what the heck are they doing? Like, anybody, we're not talking about making a mistake. You can misjudge a ball, a fly ball in the outfield, right? But when it's something like, excuse me, are you paying attention here? When you see something like that, and it happened last year, and it happens again this year, what does that tell you, Marty?
To me, it's an organizational thing that's happening here. There's something that's inside here that they're not taking care of. They're not focusing on. They're allowing, maybe they're allowing Vlad and Bo to decide what they do when they do it. I don't know. It'd be nice to be in that change room to find out what is going on.
Or maybe, Marty, it's too much of a laid-back party atmosphere. They got rid of the jacket, like we talked about on Fired Up, the jacket and all that. Maybe there's still something lingering that these guys, they're 23, 24, 25, are still not, quote-unquote, professional ball players.
It could be, it could be a couple guys like that. But with the veterans that they brought into this organization over the last few years, that shouldn't be happening. When you bring guys like Belt that have won a World Series in, you bring Bassett that is just a bulldog in there. He doesn't, he's serious. If you watch that guy, it is serious business. You got Gossman and Manoah's a guy that does, and that's something that's, I'm going to go back just a little bit here before you move on. That's something that's sort of bothered because I've said Manoah struggled this year, but what have I said? Manoah has to pitch cocky. He has to be successful, and he hasn't been able to do that. And then he did that against Frazier. Some words were exchanged back and forth. I was glad to see it, truthfully. I was, because to me that meant that Manoah's locked in there. He's ready to throw. And then who comes running out of the dugout? John Schneider to talk to him. To me, that was the wrong decision. Take it that it was the first, even if it was only the first chip. Manoah pitches well off of emotion, and he needs that. He's need to get that argument going. And up to that point, he hasn't been able to do it that year, and he was able to do it, and Schneider came out and cut it off right away. And I think that was a mistake as well by Schneider on that day.
All right, Norm, we'll go 2 or 3 minutes. We have another question, and I've just a person who gives me the Costa Classic gave it to me late tonight, so I just got it right now. So we'll close out with the Costa Classic. Thank you to that person who gave me the Costa Classic. But Norm, the next question,
is his name Marty? Or it's like another Marty?
No, it's the same person who asked that Blue Jay question. Now the next question, and I'll take this one because you know this. I'm a Buffalo Bill fan. Is it true about Josh Allen? All right. So Norm probably doesn't know what we're talking about. Marty may know what we're talking about. Josh Allen, I'll say it. All right. I'm the president of provinces of Canada, mayor elected.
Oh, yeah, we know all that already.
All right? Josh Allen was engaged to a lady. Apparently, Josh Allen did a little, I don't know what you want to call it.
Chicanery? Is that the word that you always use, Joseph?
Chicanery, whatever.
Yeah, that's it.
Okay, but apparently the chicanery is pregnant. And that chicanery, when they found out that Josh Allen did it, well, his ex-girlfriend, it was the day of when the Buffalo Bills, the day in the playoff game, played the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, if you look at it, the Buffalo Bills laid an egg against the Cincinnati Bengals that day, and Josh Allen wasn't great that day. So you put 2 and 2 together. So I assume for the person who asked that question, it is true. Josh Allen has been on the PGA tour and everything, shaking hands and all that. He looks ripped this year. He looks ripped. And you know what? Hopefully, because I'm the Buffalo Bill fan here. Hopefully, it doesn't
hold that against
him.
you, Joseph.
It doesn't deter him from, Norm. You could see this. Everybody has a chance to win a Super Bowl, a Stanley Cup, or whatever. Give me one. The Leafs are not going to do it.
So Joe, the question kind of got veered. Like you veered off into severe left field. The guy got his girlfriend pregnant, and now are the Bills ready to win the?
Yeah, that's the question. Is it true about Josh Allen? I'm saying it is true.
Well, okay, but he's not in the middle of this. Surely he can deal with his girlfriend and God willing, the pregnancy goes well. But surely all that stuff that happens with a lot of guys or family or whatever is that shouldn't interfere with him doing what he has to on the football field. It's not like he's slacking for money.
Thank God you said that. He focused on winning football games. Focused on winning football games, and that's it. All right, Norm, as you close it out, we'll close it out with the Costa Classic, but I'll give everybody a scoreboard update. Like Marty said, the Blue Jays lost to the Rays 6-4. Okay, now we'll go to the NHL there. And by the way...
And Joe and Norm, I'm doubly heartbroken because East York Bulldogs are playing 500 baseball. Well,
you're heartbroken because they're not playing better, or because they're not
playing better.
I'm petitioning.
Oh yeah, that's right. You're coaching there.
No. We won 2-1 yesterday and lost 5-1. So
all right. So hold on, Marty. I'm petitioning that they fire the manager and hire Norm RUMACK as the new manager of your East York. Do you agree with that?
I got a bucket that he could sit on right beside me.
All right, Norm.
Is it got a cushion?
It's got a little padding on the lid on the top.
Yeah, at my age, Marty, that would hurt.
All right, and it's still 1-0. Florida is leading Carolina, and 17 minutes left to go in the third period. So again, if Florida wins, 3-0. So we can see. Florida
I'm gonna give Billy his props here, seeing it's his show and Norm's show. I'm gonna give Billy his props because he did say Bobrovsky could steal a series or at least a few games, and he's done that in this series against Carolina. He's really stood on his head, and he's done this. And my son, approached me with a question the other day. I don't know what you think of this, Norman Joe, but if Bobrovsky wins a Stanley Cup, now remember, he's got 2 Vezas, I think it is he Hall of Fame material?
Well, he's certainly in the conversation.
Right.
If he wins a cup, yeah. Anybody who wins and by the way, I'll put this out there right now. Assuming the Panthers go on in the finals, right at the top of the list as a possible Conn Smythe Trophy winner is Mr. Tkachuk, front and center. Gotta be. We'll see what happens.
And if they win the Stanley Cup, is it Tkachuk or is it Bobrovsky that people?
You know what? That's a good question, Joe. Because you know what, Bobrovsky, since he's come in, they've lost one game, maybe not even lost since he's decided to come in and take over for. What was
they
the
lost
kid's
to
name?
the Leafs.
Ryan or whatever the heck his name was?
Well, they lost one game to Toronto. Right?
Yeah. So since then, you would probably have to get to Bobrovsky as much as Tkachuk has played really good. Back-to-back overtime winners. And I love the fact that he just leaves the ice. I love that after he scores. Yeah. Boys, we're leaving. Let's go.
I know he is like a throwback 1967. He could have played on that 74-75 Flyer team. Mean, nasty, and skilled as all heck.
Yep.
Really,
you know all the guys, Norm. You've watched, the bosses, guys on other teams that you say I hate him, but I wish he was on my team. He's one of those guys.
And I hate him, and I'd say I think they won't admit it, but I think most opposing players are a little bit or a lot afraid of him.
Oh,
yeah. They are.
Yeah.
And that's
it's almost like, remember Mark Messier back in the day?
Yeah.
Not a lot of guys would drop the gloves against Mark Messier. Mark Messier could throw them a little bit if he needed to.
Well, yeah, and he's smart enough that he can use his stick a little bit when he has to and get away with it, right? He's smart in terms of what he's kind of like what Pronger used to do on defense. He'll get you, and the referee may not notice it.
Yep.
And Marty said, yes, Billy did say Florida and all that, but you got to give it to Norm also, because Florida last year, President's Trophy winner, everybody expecting it from Florida, and this year even Norm said 2-3 months ago, watch out for Florida. Florida was the President's Trophy winner last year. They couldn't get it done. They made the trade, and look where they're on now. If they win today, a game. And how do you like to be in Miami? One night, Miami Heat. Next night, Florida Panthers.
Yeah. It's like whose shirt do you want first, Kachuk's or Jimmy Butler's? It's like it'd be amazing. Imagine if the Heat and the Panthers win their respective championships in the same year. Probably the longest shot odds in the history of pro sports that two teams from that one city, especially considering Miami needed that play-in game right against Chicago Bulls just to get in. And then the Panthers almost didn't make the playoffs.
And Raptors would have played Miami. And for that matter, we talk about Kachuk. Let's talk about Jimmy Butler playing like Michael Jordan.
Yeah, well, he's playing like that, isn't he? No, and Coach Spoelstra and the recruiting player. It's just brilliant what they've done there.
Is that main guy though, Norm? Kyle Lowry? Right? Is he the guy that brought the winning to that organization? Butler's
been a winner everywhere he's gone.
Yeah, you had that Kyle Lowry in there.
That certainly helps. Yeah.
Marty mentioned Lowry. If he wins an NBA championship, he has 2. Is he a Hall of Famer?
Well, I don't have his numbers in front of me, but usually if you win 2 championships, you're a key part of those championship clubs. You're going to get a mention. I just don't have his career stats in front of me to know in terms of what else they're looking.
The encyclopedia leave, Norm. You should have left Alex on here. He would know that.
Oh, get him back on for 30 seconds, okay?
All right. Norm.
Joe, just pay him a little more money than you usually do. That's all.
Listen, I'm paying you enough money. Take some money from you, give it to Alex. Or okay, better yet, there you're looking at it. You're looking at it. The East York Bulldog coaching staff, Norm Rumack and Marty Roberts. You can't lose, nor can you win, but you can't lose.
But you'll be guaranteed to have a good time.
Says the man, the esteemed, prestigious President of the Provinces of Canada, Joe Pasek. In fact, for him,
call me properly.
For him, doling out money is like lifting manholes.
All right. On that note, Norm, close it out. We're going to close out with the Costa Classic. We went over an hour and all that. And again, Billy, we miss you. Hopefully we'll be on here. I'm sorry we didn't get to have you on here, but hopefully you'll be on next week. Norm,
right.
Close it out.
So thanks.
Marty Roberts, tell everybody, Norm wants to tweet you, wants to Facebook you, Instagram you, everything. Tell them how to get a hold of you.
Lefty22 on Twitter and Instagram.
Okay. And Marty, if they ask you for your autograph at an East York Bulldogs game, are you good that way? You'll autograph whatever they want?
Yeah, I only charge $5.
You're getting like Joe.
That's what I've learned. I've learned it. Look, I've learned. I'm the best. I've learned.
I teach him, man. Come on.
I got since I've known Joe, I got long pockets and short arms.
Yeah, geez, Bart. That's word you're going to cut back on the allowances you give your kids.
That he already did. All right, Norm, close it out. We're going to close it out with the Costa.
All right. Yeah, okay. So thanks to COSA, Standardbred Horse Racing Association, and the king of carpets, the big Habs fan, Nikki. Thanks to Joe Pasek, the esteemed, prestigious, multi-exponential platform, Fired Up Network. I hear, Joe, it's even available on the Mars lander now. Is that true?
Mom, listen, your face is going to be seen worldwide now. Worldwide.
Yeah.
So we got to see every week. You got to come on here wearing a different Chelsea shirt.
Well, I do that anyway. I just bought some more, Joe. You'll be pleased to know. I know you were worried. But anyway, thanks to, of course, COSA, Nikki, King of Carpets, Joe Pasek, Fired Up Network, Marty Roberts, Alex Campbell, great guests. Folks, thanks to you most of all for watching, whether you watch us live or on repeat on any of the platforms, including on Facebook Live. So thanks. God bless. Have yourselves a good week. Be safe. Enjoy your holiday, the rest of your holiday weekend, and we'll talk to you right here next Monday, not on the Fired Up Network.
Stay with more Fired Up. Come on, you got to get more fired up. Come on.
Yeah, stay with more Fired Up, especially because Joe is on 24/7. You know.
Right. And again, we're sorry we missed Billy. Hopefully, we'll be on next week. Here's the classic. Stay on, guys.
He'll be back.
Of the nation's richest harness race, the $1 million North America Cup. They swing into the stretch. The field's in motion for North America Cup 15, the final. And they're off and pacing. Pearl River Mad has had a disappointing start. He was off the gate several lengths and didn't get away well. Neither did Day in a Life. He had to be snatched up. There goes Workplace, and Sealed and Delivered for Pierce uses the inside lane advantage to take the lead. Resurgent Dragon is right there with the pace. Rustler Hanover is off stride. Run to the bank now along the inside, and Harrod's fourth. Pearl River Mad's recovered to be in fifth. That's Dragon again, sixth on the outside. Straight Pathway in seventh. Then Party with the big dog. Rustler Hanover is trailing after a gate break just in behind Day in a Life. Tony Morgan sweeps up to put Workplace on the lead ahead of Sealed and Delivered. The opening quarter was 26 1/5, and they turn to the backstretch. Sealed and Delivered. Pierce is pointing him back out to try to retake before the half. 4 more lengths. Resurgent Dragon back in third. Run to the Bank is fourth. Pearl River Mad looking at it from fifth, and Dragon again is sixth. Straight Path is seventh. 2 more lengths to Party with the big dog. Then Day in a Life. Rustler Hanover is 10th after a disappointing early break for him. 53 3. They've tied the track record for the fastest first half. Sealed and Delivered is the leader into the final 3/8. Sticking to him right there in the pocket second is Workplace. 2 more lengths. Never Say Die has brought Pearl River Mad back into it fourth on the outside. Dragon again to the outside fifth. Run to the Bank is sixth. Seventh on the outside for Straight Path. Then Day in a Life. Party with the big dog. Rustler Hanover is out of it after another break. The 3/4 1:21 3 into the stretch in Cup 15. Sealed and Delivered twice on the lead. And off stride when coming out on him was Workplace. Way out wide for Straight Path. And in between pacers, here comes Dragon again. Sealed and Delivered, but it's going to be LaChance on the far outside. Straight Path, Workplace recovering, but Straight Path has got the path to $1 million for Mike LaChance, and Workplace was second.